Oh man, she did what? Why is the government always lying? That's not your fault. That was your mother's job. I know it sucks. It's hard, but it's fair. If we don't get our heads out of our collective asses, we're gonna be lost in the sauce. You knew he was sorry when you met him at DHS. Come on, baby girl. What's the solution? Look, I know I'm fucked up.
Welcome to the Angry Nerd Podcast. My name is Arshawn Wade, and I am the Angry Nerd. Tonight's topic, African American reparations. It's our money, and we need it now. But first, let's get into some hot topics. Once again, making social media headlines, we got your boy, Tekashi 6ix9ine. This time, taking shots at none other than Uncle Snoop Dogg. Why are you doing this? It's like, I don't know if this kid really believes that he's untouchable or if he has a death wish. I'm not entirely sure which the case is, but he has put out videos alluding to Snoop Dogg being a snitch and all kinds of silly stuff. He's even kind of got some prison guys or whatever to kind of put a little dirt on Snoop's name a little bit. And I'm sitting here like, wait a minute. This kid is either one, a genius, or two, he just has the best PR people. Somebody over there in his camp is a genius, because what he's doing is he's stirring up so much hoopla with other people that we're forgetting the fact that this kid ratted on everybody in his organization. Nobody's talking about him being a rat right now. Everybody's talking about these unfounded allegations that he's making against Snoop Dogg, somebody who's had a pretty ironclad reputation in the rap industry, and as far as I know, in the streets as well, because he comes from a background and a demographic that didn't go for any of those funny games. But here's where I have a bit of a problem with Snoop. Why even respond to this kid? I wouldn't even respond to this guy. I think somebody like Snoop, who's been around as long as he has, they should be intelligent enough to see what this kid's doing. He's made his entire career off of trolling. And that's exactly what he's doing right now. He's like eating a bowl of Fruit Loops and watching a documentary where some guy's calling Snoop out, looking back at the camera and stuff. I mean, he's a silly kid. And like I said, my heart goes out to him because I just have a nagging suspicion that he's going to get hurt out here one of these days when he's up to his antics. So shout out to Uncle Snoop. Keep doing your thing. I mean, Snoop is all over the place. He's no longer just a rapper. Snoop is an icon. He sends kids to the NFL. He sends kids to college. He's responsible for a lot of positive things. And, you know, shout out to Uncle Snoop. Also, hot topic number 2, COVID-19 cases are up in China. I thought they had the thing licked at one point in time. I thought that they had totally, defeated the coronavirus, but I was reading yesterday that they've had some new cases and they've had to go on a second shutdown. Now, for me, if I'm going to believe that the coronavirus, the big bad coronavirus is horrible and it's really out there, then I would, if I'm the United States, I would say, okay, see, China thought they had it licked, and apparently they don't. So I would postpone this whole open things up. So that's where I'm at with it. Is the United States still going to open itself up, go into phase 2 of opening the economy and everything back up after the COVID-19? I'm very interested to see what President Donald Trump is going to do in lieu of China having new cases, and apparently it's an outbreak again. And I've even heard rumors that the strain is It's airborne. It's not like you just have to come in contact with somebody, that is actually in the air. So I'm very curious to see how this is going to play out and what effect it's going to have on President Donald Trump's decision in opening the country back up. All right, diving right into it, because Dylan Brackley is asking me, what a title. I'm curious where you're going. For anybody out there on Spotify, Podbean, or YouTube who's wondering who I'm talking to when I talk about the chat, I'm talking to the guys in the chat. Sorry, the guys and girls in the chat on Facebook Live, because while I'm recording this for Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube, boy, that's a mouthful, I'm also broadcasting live on Facebook Live to my friends in Facebook world. Shout out. So tonight's topic, African American reparations. It's our money and we want it now. Now, there are some who will say, Arshawn, how do you get to reparations in light of where we are as a country right now? The United States is in a bad situation. We're down bad. Things aren't looking very great. And you're talking about copious amounts of money that the United States may or may not owe your people. Well, here's the thing. This is what got me thinking about it. I was looking at the second round of the of stimulus, or what are they calling it? Pandemic impact payment or something like that. I was looking at that and I seen that the first wave was like $3 trillion. And then I see that they're going to spend another $3 trillion on this second wave of impact payments and all the other stimulus stuff, you know, because that isn't the only thing that's it's going to pay out. It's also going to do some loans for businesses and things like that. But I said, okay, so that's $6 trillion. And whenever this topic is brought up, the United States wants to play the peasant. You know, like, oh, there's so many black people, we can't pay them all. It's really an unfathomable number. But I did the math. According to how many black people there are, they say around 40 million black people in the United States of America. If they gave all those 40 million black people $100,000, do you know how much it would cost? It would cost $4 trillion. Now, if you just had $6 trillion because of the pandemic or whatever, okay, we get that. So I'm not going to hit you up for the money right away. But now that I see that it is doable for you to come up with this kind of scratch, I think that it's time for you to kick in. Now, mind you, I was a big fan of the Dave Chappelle skit on reparations, and I got a nagging suspicion it's probably going to go in that direction, but I don't care. I want the money. I want to call J.G. Wentworth, and I want him to go down to the White House and demand our money. I want him to go to the Senate. I want legislation, whoever's responsible for unassing that amount of money, I want him to go see those people and tell them, listen, it's our money and we want it now. I'll tell you why. Because the Japanese during World War II, do you know that was 120,000 people that they gave? I'm sorry, that's a bad number. There was 120,000 people that were affected by it, but by the time they decided to give reparations to the Japanese, there was somewhere to the tune of 80,000 people that they gave $20,000 each to. And they said that the stipulations was you had to be somebody who was directly related as one of the people who was it wasn't quarantined. I forget the word. I'm blanking out on it right now. But you had to be one of those people or a direct descendant of one of those folks to receive the proceeds. And they got 20 grand. Now, they got this 20 grand back in 88. I think it was 88, if I'm not mistaken. They got 20 grand. Now, 20 grand was a very different number in 88. That was something like $50,000 right now today. Now, if those people who, don't get me wrong, it was a tragedy, but here's the very different thing about that. These people were products of war. You understand what I'm saying when I say that? Like, these weren't people who were stolen from their country and had their language and their culture ripped away from them. These were wards of a war, a world war. You see what I'm saying? These were people who were displaced due to the war and everything like that. And these are people that we were at war with. Now, you recognized the wrong that was done there as a country and paid them maybe 20 grand. What some people would think that's a low number. But what do you think the number should look like for a whole group of people who have been displaced? Language, culture, hell, they don't even have a roof over their head after they get done dealing with this debacle known as slavery. We didn't have a roof over our head. We didn't have an economy. We didn't have any employable skills. We just figured out a way to eke out a living. When I say we, I'm loosely referring to our ancestors, because some of my well-meaning Caucasian brothers love to say, but Arshawn, you weren't a slave. You never had to pick cotton, bro. Good. I see where you're going with that. But you never owned slaves, Todd. You never had to crack a whip over anybody. But those people who did do that set up for their children and their loved ones wealth. And I'm not saying all white people. So before somebody gets all up in their feelings talking about, hey man, I'm poor too. I'm all messed up too. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the Caucasian people who are leaders of the free world. That's who I'm talking about. If you wear flannel, if a flannel shirt is in heavy rotation in your closet, hey buddy, we're brothers. We're of the same ilk, okay? When I'm referring to the Caucasian people, I'm talking about those people in Congress. I'm talking about those people in the White House. I'm talking about those people in the Senate. Those are the people that I'm talking to. Okay, so let's go ahead and get that defined right now so I don't have to deal with a whole bunch of foolish, hey brother, hey. I don't want to do that, okay? So here's the thing. This is what I want. Now that I know that the United States is able to scare up this kind of money, I think that after we come out of this, let's make sure that we put this entire coronavirus thing to bed. And once that's done, as a country, we should be rallying for these folks to go ahead and kick in. Now, one of the reports that I read said, how do we figure out who gets paid? And some people may think that my view on this is too simplistic, but is it? Anybody who looks like a suspect, pay them. It's just as simple and as plain as that. Anybody who an old lady would typically clutch their purse around, pay them. That's it. And to me, it's about evening the playing field. It's about righting an age-old wrong. I remember the Japanese people in these situations, they got an apology and they got monetary compensation. In this country, we have yet to get an apology, and we haven't gotten any type of compensation. And I think that we should. I think that the economic playing field would look, the economic, groundwork would look very different if $100,000 is life-changing money. Now, $100,000 today, it's probably the equivalent of about 50 grand some 10 or 20 years ago. Maybe 20 years ago. And it's not a whole lot of money. When we think about it, $100,000 is not a whole lot of money. You could barely buy a decent house with 100 grand. You know what I mean? But it would say two things to me. One, it would say, we recognize that we have done something wrong as a country. And two, we apologize for it. We know that no amount of money can make up for the fact that you don't know your language, you don't know who your ancestors are, you couldn't put together a family tree if you really wanted to. None of that is going to make up, no amount of money is going to make up for that. We get that. But here is a token that we want to give to you guys in order to try and fix things in this country. because regardless of whether people like to admit it or not, the United States has bad luck because of that karma, because of that negative karma. You ever notice things that go smooth for a few years and then bam, bam. Now, every year isn't like 2020. 2020 is probably the worst. But ever so often, it's just bam, 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 thing after thing happens to this country. Well, this is what I've recognized. You're not going to have good luck. You're not going to have positive things happen for very long. You're always going to be in a train wreck, United States of America, because your greatest sin, you have not acknowledged and you have not made any effort to try and make amends. You haven't done that. I have heard so many people say, pull up your bootstrap. What are you guys complaining about? The Jews went through the Holocaust and look, they're doing just fine. Well, if you think that way, and if that's the way you carry it, shame on you. Because you have never actually tried to understand black people. You have never actually tried to walk a mile in my shoes, so to speak. I was talking with a friend of mine who will remain nameless because he was very innocent in his question. He asked me, Arshawn, did your parents teach you how to conduct yourself when you encounter police officers? And I said, yeah, I've been black my whole life. Of course they did. And he said, he asked me the question because his son came to him and said, Dad, you never talked to me about talking to the cops. Well, he's Caucasian. He's Caucasian. He's a giant of a man. And I'm like, of course you wouldn't have that experience with a white cop because you're everything he wanted to be. You're everything that he dreamed of. A big white dude, handsome. You're everything he wanted to be in life. You're his idol. Okay? So of course you would never have that experience. But if you're a 160-pound black dude, on the other hand, you're going to be treated very differently. You will be treated very differently. And like I said, until the folks up on high start to acknowledge some of these things and try to repair them, because that is the operative term in reparations, repair. Here, take this bread and try to fix some of the damage that we have done. You know what I'm saying? And that's what it's really supposed to be about. And we never really got an opportunity to do that. We never got an opportunity to do that. Our folks came straight out of slavery. Some of them stayed because, well, what are they going to do? This is all they know. They were born and bred right here on the plantation. And so somehow or another, like I said, great grandpa figured out a way to eke out a living and build a house and put a couple of kids through college and things like that. And we immediately assimilated to this society. Now, quoting Mr. Zoe Williams from the Zoe What Show, shout out. Krishnamurti says, it is no measure of health to be fully integrated into a profoundly sick society. I would have to agree with Mr. Krishnamurti. So everything that we do in this country as black people is a sort of morbid, American thing. You know what I'm saying? We don't really have culture. We kind of developed it with the blues and rock and roll and then R&B and hip hop and things like that. We sort of developed it, but that's not our true culture. And I think that if they had done something like this a long time ago, I don't think we would have Crips today. Shout out Kevin Cotton. But I don't think we would have Crips today, because I think that gangs and things like that, these are our attempt at locating our tribe. That's what I think, that when we seek out gangs and things like that, the Vice Lords and the Crips and the GDs, this is an inherent mechanism that I'm reaching out for. I'm trying to find where I belong in the universe, because I know, based on my reception from the people, the dominant society in this country, that I don't belong here. And I think that if we were to receive reparations, that would be the first token of acceptance by the dominant society, saying that you do belong here. this country is just as much yours as it is mine, because we came over here and jacked it because we were looking for freedom. And we want you to have that same freedom. At the very least, here's enough money to purchase a home. Here's enough money to buy some land. Here's enough money to establish yourself. We have never gotten an opportunity to establish ourselves as a society, because we are, for all intents and purposes, there aren't a lot of people in this country who view us as Americans until they need numbers, like going to war or voting or something like that. Other than that, most people, most of these organizations, most of these vehicles, these social vehicles like feminism or Republicans and Democrats, they really could care less. They really couldn't care less. I hate when people mix that saying of it's not I could care less, it's I couldn't care less. Anyways, back on topic. Back on topic. Most of them could not care less about what African Americans go through in this country until it's time to vote. Come on, black people, let your voice be heard. Most people were put off by Donald Trump saying, "Black people, what do you have to lose?" I wasn't put off by that, because at least he had the gonads to say, look, y'all been messing around in this country. What do you have to lose by trying me out? And although I don't think that he's the answer, I understood what he was saying. And like I said, that was the first time I saw someone standing up there running for president, acting like, I know y'all done had it rough. Hey, you ain't got nothing to lose by voting for me. If I mess you around, it's the same thing that you've always got from this country. So who cares? It was very crass. It was very harsh. And a lot of black people were like, oh, I can't believe he's saying that. But it's the truth. We've been messed around in this country. And for all his faults, he's the first commander-in-chief to acknowledge that. I know the historians are going to say, well, Lincoln freed y'all. John F. Kennedy, he liked chocolate folks. Okay. When it serves a purpose, let's not act like the Civil War was all about slavery. The abolishment of slavery was a byproduct of the Civil War. That's what it was. Simple and plain. Because the North didn't have a need for slaves. They had already made their money. They had already built up their country. So they didn't need slaves. So they weren't all the way messed up about it. They knew all the way from the gate that it was wrong. When they drafted the Constitution, they knew it was wrong. But they decided, look, we got enough stuff. If we can get everybody to agree on this, we'll deal with slavery some other time. They knew at the time that they drafted the Constitution. None of those guys agreed with it. But they was like, this is so sketchy and it's such a heated topic. We don't even want to go off into it. Let's just get everybody to agree to this Constitution right here, and we'll deal with slavery some other time. Because if we bring up slavery, we bring up those folks down south and their slaves, we will never get a Constitution. So that was the whole get down with that. Anybody who had sixth grade history kind of loosely remembers those conversations. Probably not in the language that I use, because I don't use the textbook language, but I always put my spin on it because I'm like, talk plain. They use these flowery words and flowery terms in textbooks, like servant, because slave is harsh. But getting back on topic, African Americans not only need reparations, we deserve it. I say we need reparations because if you look at it on an economic scale, we're in last place in all the charts. And then you'll get some yahoo who jumps out there and says, black people spend $3 trillion on hair care products every year. Well, that's fine. But are we compiling the number of how much our Caucasian counterparts spend on hair care products? No, because we're not just putting together these studies to show who spends what on hair care product. We're trying to debunk the fact that black people need reparations. That's what the motivation is. Because when you go I actually looked and seen how much Caucasian people spend on hair care products every year. $13 trillion. And that's a big number. But when you say, Arshawn, where you get this big number, you take a look at it. There are more Caucasian people people who are classified as Caucasian, because our Mexican brethren and pretty much anybody with straight hair gets classified as white, according to the census and whatnot. So when you compile these numbers, you're talking about a much larger group of people. So they spend almost 5 times as much as we do on hair care products, but that's not what you see being put in front of you. What you see being put in front of you is, look, black folks are frivolous. Black folks spend their money on foolish things. Look how much they spend on hair care products. Now playing devil's advocate for just 1 second. Personally, story time with the Angry Nerd. So recently, my son has done pretty well in keeping his room clean and keeping up with his homework and his studies while we're going to school online during this whole COVID-19 crisis. So he has earned a television set in his room. I say television set like an old person. Of course, they don't have television sets anymore. You know, the little skinny TV. Anyways, so I'm going to reward him with a small TV in his room. I go to Walmart and I go to buy a TV. There are no TVs in Walmart. And I thought that was very odd. Not one TV. So after my 4th Walmart and 1 Best Buy not being able to find a single TV, I deduced that black people have single-handedly bought every television set in the state of Arkansas. They bought all the TVs. I said they didn't use the stimulus check to buy food. They bought TV. I'm not kidding. I went as recently as today. I said, well, surely, this was last week. I said, surely they got some TVs in by now. They said, we did. We got some TVs in this morning, and they're gone too. They said, you have to order a TV online, Arshawn, and have it sent to your house. Because once they get in the store, they're gone. So, while some white people will say, oh, black people spend money in a frivolous way, I can't all the way argue with that. But I stand on the fact that we deserve reparations. We deserve the opportunity. And as the United States of America, the government deserves the opportunity to say, hey, we tried. We gave them all $100,000. We paid reparations. They blew it. And that's on them. And I personally feel like we can put this whole thing to bed if they first give up the money. They got to do that. That's where it starts. Why? Because they are the offenders. And I know so many silly people who are going to say, Arshawn, those people aren't responsible. Yes, they are, because they hold the same offices that said that slavery was okay. They hold the same offices that said that it's all right to make money off of your slaves. It's all right to beat them if they run away. It's all right to beat them to death if they do certain violations against you or your property. So yes, they are 100% responsible for making the situation right. Once again, for any of my listeners out there on Podbean, Spotify, or YouTube, when I reference the chat, I'm speaking of the chat in Facebook Live, because I'm broadcasting live from Facebook. Right now, I'm going to go to the chat, see if there were any questions. You guys bear with me as I scroll up to see if there are any questions that I can answer real quick. Okay, Kevin Palmer says, pay those certain people who do not make over a certain amount. Anyone over it gets less money. You make the less you get until you make the cutoff point of income. I think he was going somewhere with that, but that was very white of you. Are you a bot? Are you an agent, Kevin? 100K can get you a milli if you go holla at the bank. Okay, we're going to get him out of the chat. I need one of the moderators to get him out of here, okay? I don't want you asking any more questions. No more comments for you. Blake Brown says, everybody that enslaved has been compensated except black people. I totally agree with you. Everybody has seen some sort of reparation or restitution for services rendered against their will, or their ancestors were paid off. I know I was reading one report that said what is that guy's name? I can't think of his name right now. Something Reed. I can't remember his name. But anyway, he was jockeying back in 2004. He was jockeying for reparations. Now, the problem that I have with what he did was he was asking for a number that was way too big. He was asking for 12 to 15 trillion dollars. Well, the United States only brings in about $20 trillion a year annual revenue. So there's no way that they could fork over like $15 trillion. You know, it's like 75% of their gross income as a country. So to me, that's unrealistic. And when I hear guys like that who are supposed to be the spokesperson for the African American community, I'm like, you're supposed to be intelligent. You have to know that that's unrealistic. So that makes me think he's just an agent. He's a talking head. He's not really up there to try to get anything done. If he was trying to get something done, he would ask for a realistic number. And like I said, it's only after I see that we've spent $6 trillion during this COVID-19 crisis that I came with the number $100,000. Because if you do the math, 100,000 times 4 million, that's $4 trillion. They can come up with that kind of money because we have seen in recent months that they were able to raise those funds in order to take care of some of us who have been displaced in the workforce. So I think that that's a realistic number, and I think that we need to get the right person in front of Congress asking for what we deserve, what we should rightly be paid. And the big debacle now is who gets reparations. And I kind of whimsically hinted at anybody who looks like a suspect. So I'm just saying, give it to all black people. Well, I think we should do it based off the United States Census. If you classify as African American, then you should get paid. You should pay those people. If you're underage, put it in a trust or a CD or whichever one accrues the most money for a kid to go to college, and let that $100 grand sit. I don't think they should run around and give kids $100,000 to their parents, because they would never really reap the benefits of that. And Arshawn, why do you say that? I say that for this very simple reason. Because if they took that $100 grand and they put it in a trust or a CD or whatever, and the kid couldn't touch it until they were 18, then those kids who want to go to college can't. Think about what kind of interest that $100,000 will accrue by the time this kid is 18 years of age. The idea of higher education seems more real when you actually have the means. But when you're just shooting for the stars, hoping that you make it, hoping that you get a scholarship, hoping that something happens, or if you're trying to work a job and work your way through college and, you know, barely sleeping and living off of ramen noodles, it's very difficult. I mean, it seems impossible. The number of people who actually do that and find themselves being successful is very small. It's almost along the same lines of making it to the NFL or the NBA. It's a crapshoot. It's a gamble. But if I have the means to get to college, I don't have to worry about money. I don't have to worry about a car. I don't have to worry about room and board. All that's paid for. All I have to do is study and be a kid in college. The idea of college becomes more real then. And while I'm not just a champion for higher education, I do recognize the need for it. You know, I do recognize that some people want to go to college and they don't have the ability to do it. Some people want to be involved in certain programs and they don't have the means to do it. Some people would love to change careers, but if they go to an 8-week training course, that 8 weeks could ruin their financial situation. As many people who like to get on Facebook and social media and act like their life is all that, the numbers show that there are a great number of Americans who are living check to check. There's a lot of us who are living check to check. And this pandemic has shown that. 2 weeks. There's a lot of people whose financial situation was in shambles after 2 weeks of not being able to work. That's unfair. That is very unfair. It's not okay. And we shouldn't be okay with it. Do you know that 1% of the population is richer than 90% of the population? That's not okay. now I'm going into another direction with this because now I'm talking about capitalism. After reading a couple of books by Emma Goldman, one of the famous and my most favorite anarchists, I have recognized that capitalism creates criminals. Capitalism creates the haves and the have-nots. I'm not saying I'm a socialist. I'm not saying I'm a communist. What I'm saying is our society creates these horrible situations that we all find ourselves in. So our society created the situation to where if I miss 2 weeks of work, I'm in abject poverty. Our society created those situations based on the way things are set up. The socioeconomic scales are so slanted that it's unreal. Like I said, 1% of the population being wealthier than 90% of the population. That shouldn't happen. In the interest of humanity, that shouldn't be okay. When Nikola Tesla developed AC, alternate current, he wanted to give it to humanity. But was it J.P. Morgan? J.P. Morgan or Thomas? I think it was J.P. Morgan. They decided, okay, this joker is crazy. We can make billions of dollars with this idea. So they tricked him out of it. And that's exactly why I remember being a child and thinking, why should we pay for lights, gas, water? Why should we pay for these things that we need? Why don't we just get these things? And of course, this is coming from a situation where you see your mom not able to pay all of the light bill or all of the water bill. You have these questions like, why shouldn't we just get this? Why shouldn't humanity, whoever created the water, the reverse osmosis process, whoever created electricity, direct current, alternate current, I found out that the band AC/DC, that's where they get their name, AC/DC, alternate current, direct current. Anyways, fun fact. Why don't we just get that? You know what I mean? And I've often joked that as soon as they figure out how to bottle air, we'll have to pay for air as well. You know, and it's horrible. And it's like, we accept this. We accept this from this society because we've been conditioned to do it. That's why you'll hear somebody saying, black people just need to pull themselves up by their bootstrap. Well, I will take a page out of Dr. Martin Luther King's book when I'll say it's very inappropriate to reference a pair of boots when a man doesn't even have a pair. You know what I mean? It's kind of uncouth, as the old folks would say, to tell a man to pull himself up by his bootstraps when he doesn't have a pair of boots. You know what I mean? And that's what our ancestors were left with when Lincoln freed the slaves. No boots. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but they didn't give us any boots. And along the way, we stole boots, figured out how to make boots and all kinds of things like that. But I think that on the psychological level, it would make me, and I think most black people, feel a little differently about this country if the United States of America decided we were wrong, we did something bad, and we want to make amends. We want to pay penance to what we did as a country. And I think that any moral human being would see the situation for what it is and say, you know what, you're right. I think $15 trillion is unreasonable. I would like for it to be something big like that. But let's talk about something that we've recognized that this country can pull off relatively quickly. You know what I mean? They came with those impact payments, pretty quick. They came with that bread really fast. So they scared up $3 trillion on the first run, and they scared up another $3 trillion for this one. I have read something that said that there was something put in place for this to where they had a little bit saved up for a rainy day just in case this happened. But I digress. I do think that we are owed money in this country, and I think that the United States government should acknowledge that after the coronavirus has been conquered. Once we conquer the coronavirus, our next challenge as a country is reparations for African Americans. And then we can finally feel like we belong in this country and we can move together hand in hand in this country. To wrap things up, Tekashi 6ix9ine, kid, you need to be careful. China, peace, love, and blessings to you. I hope everything works out over there. I know that the coronavirus flared up on you again. Black people, we need to come together, well-meaning, good-hearted Caucasian people. You guys need to be right there with us because this can be big for us as a country. If we get the money that we are owed, not the money that we're owed, money as a token of apology from this country, then we can move forward as Americans. Then I will feel very American if they go ahead and give us reparations. I will feel so American. There will be a red, white, and blue flag flying out in my front yard, and I will finally register with the social services. Never did it. But anyway, I probably shouldn't say that. They might be after me because I think you're supposed to by the time you're 18. That was a lot of moons ago. But I want to thank everybody for listening on Spotify, YouTube, and Podbean. I want to thank my friends on Facebook Live for joining me. As always, it's a pleasure. Thank you guys. Support, support, support. Like, share, comment. Later on when I get the graphics and stuff put up, please go onto YouTube and check it out. Once again, my graphics were done by my man Dylan Brackley over at Savage Hippie. Shout out, homie. And my intro music that you hear on YouTube was produced by DJ Platinum Wax over at Young Black Wise Guys Records out of South Arkansas. My name is Arshawn Wade, aka The Angry Nerd.